to Season 2 of the Fairways People podcast, where we share inspiring stories, meaningful conversations, and the voices behind our charity. Each episode offers a closer look at the people and passion that drive us. Hosted by Fairways Managing Director Gareth Webb.
Hello and welcome to another Fairways People podcast. My name's Gareth Webb, the Managing Director, and our special guest today is the one and only Dr. Emma Woodward. Hello, Emma.
Hiya, Gareth. How you doing?
Not too bad. Thanks for joining me. I was just thinking, just before we come on the podcast, about how we first met. I thought it's quite bizarre, really. You I think it was one of our guest speakers at the conference put me in contact with you on LinkedIn, and I could see all the fantastic work you've done in terms of children's social care, trauma informed. You've been a TED Talk.
Yeah.
You've done lots like that. And so I hooked up on you, and you was in New Zealand. And then I see a picture, and I see the Spinnaker Tower, Portsmouth, in the background. And I'm like, what? Are you in Portsmouth? And yeah, you were on, I think you'd having a trip back home, but you're actually from Portsmouth, which I didn't realise.
Yeah.
You've emigrated back from New Zealand and you're living back in Portsmouth.
I am
Crazy.
indeed. Serendipity.
Yes, small world, small world. So, yeah, can you believe it that we're both Pompey born and bred?
I know.
Lucky us.
Wow, they say nervous systems like familiarity, don't they?
So, I just do a little intro. Emma, you've got, I think, over 25 years experience working in a sort of children's social care. You've worked in residential children's homes, secure units. You've worked your way up through different residential positions. You've been a social worker, mental health worker. I guess most prominently, you're an educational psychologist now. You moved over to New Zealand, which we'll come on to, and you set up a psychology service for literally the whole of New Zealand.
Yeah.
Wow. And now you're back here. So a massive, massive career. And I'm really delighted to speak to you today. So if it's okay, what I normally do, my guests, is rewind and just go back to a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and a little bit about you, Emma. So over to you.
That's cool. So obviously, I grew up in Portsmouth, so I am back home. I grew up in Paulsgrove, which is just the
Posh estate. Yeah, the posh estate.
The posh part. Paulsgrove's the posh part.
Yeah, I know well.
What do they call it? West Cosham.
Yeah, West Cosham, yeah.
So I grew up in Paulsgrove. I think I was always destined for a career in children's social care. My background was that I bounced in and out of foster care as a child, and I think that's definitely shaped my career. I went to school on the island, so I went to St Edmund's School, went to St Paul's, which is in West Cosham / Paulsgrove, and I went to St Edmund's. I didn't have a wonderful career at school. I was invited to leave St Edmund's at one point. So.
Invited to leave. Nice way of putting it. Yeah, I like that.
And then I took a couple of years out, kind of figuring out what it is that I wanted to do. I was in supported lodgings for a while, was homeless for a bit, and then I decided that really wasn't the life that I wanted for myself. And I think I had a bit of a wake-up call. No one's come in. This is, you do it for yourself now. And that was quite hard to realise that quite early on. I think I always had a sense that I had to have my own back, but it was either, this is a decision pathway for you now. You carry on, kind of go in the direction you're going in, which doesn't look too favourable, or you use that brain that you were given by the universe and put it to something good. So I went to Portsmouth Sixth Form College, as it was then, and did GCSEs in the evening while I worked. I had a job in a chip shop, and I had a job at Tesco's as a trainee baker. And
what chip shop? I've got to know what chip
Fisherman's
shop.
Wharf on Fawcett Road. It's not there anymore. But,
okay, right.
Yeah, so
Right.
I was there for a bit. Chris and Maggie, they were some really beautiful people. Do you know, in your life, there are some really beautiful people who help you realise that you are more than your circumstances, and Chris and Maggie were two of those people for me. And I wish I could go back and tell them. I mean, I don't even know where they are now, but they definitely were really, more than just employers. They were, they were lovely. They stabilised me a little bit. And yeah, so I went back and I did my GCSEs. I did maths and English GCSE, and then the following year I did psychology, and then I did an access course, so an access to higher education. And then I went to university at Sussex to study psychology. So I did experimental psychology at Sussex University. And I think that was definitely the making of me to be catapulted out of, I mean, Portsmouth's an interesting place, isn't it? But it is
Yeah,
a little cocoon. It's got its own culture. It's got its own language.
language.
Yeah, it's got its own way of being. And and it's, I mean, Sussex, it's only in Brighton, so it's only up the road, really. But it was so different, and especially then mixing, you know, as a care leaver. And not that you were called a care leaver then; there wasn't such a thing. But as someone who kind of come through the care system, to go to university without all of the protective factors that your fellow students had, you know, going home for holidays and parents who sent food parcels down and all of that sort of stuff. Like, that was
Yes.
never something that was available to me, but it was really interesting to mix with people aspirationally who were from very different backgrounds. It was quite eye-opening that, you know, there could be a different way of life.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was cool. And I worked all the time I studied. I had a full-time job as well as studying. So I worked for Brighton and Hove Council as a support worker. Um, so did lots of different bits and pieces. And then yeah, and then moved to London after that, and then worked as I worked as a social worker, and then I worked as a care coordinator for the drug intervention programme at Redbridge. And then I got accepted onto the educational psychology doctorate at the Tavistock in 2006. So that's kind of a whistle-stop tour of my
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
career, but it was education really, and a dedication to wanting to create better spaces for people with similar backgrounds that kind of catapulted me forward, I think.
Yeah, education. Like, yeah, it's like you say, that journey's really stuck out for you, and that's been
Mm,
really key.
yeah.
And so, if you don't mind me rewinding a little bit, you mentioned that you was in foster care
Yeah.
for a period of time. Because obviously we've got a number of foster carers. I'm doing a big campaign at the minute trying to get more foster carers. There's a national crisis or shortage. What was your experiences in foster care?
Yeah, not good.
Okay.
I didn't have any good foster carers. The person who was my stable person was actually my best friend's dad. Um, my experience of foster care was different. It was the 80s and 90s, and I recently got all of my records back. You know, I did a subject access request and got my records back, and I'm not surprised that it wasn't good quality foster care, because the belief about me and my behaviour and the way that I was written about was she needs a firm hand, she's out of control. So there was a real strong behaviourist lens to the way that I was treated in foster care. Um, and my last foster placement as an older child before I went into supported lodgings um, was just cold and lonely, and it was miles away from school. I had to catch 2 buses, which contributed to me being invited to leave. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I had a different cupboard. I had Quick Save and Tesco's Value, and the family had different stuff. You know, I was definitely,
Oh, wow.
it wasn't
Wow.
a
Yeah, yeah.
loving, warm experience. But that's kind of what fed into my doctoral thesis, is on what supports foster carers to support the education of looked after children, because I was coming from a position that I'd succeeded in education by the time I was writing a
Yeah.
doctoral thesis, but I hadn't had foster carers that had enabled me on that journey. So I wanted to know what foster carers could do to be more supportive to the children in their care, to enable them to fulfil their potential. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was. I don't think I think more so now, um, but I think children in care are like they're children first. And they've all got
Mm.
different areas of potential, aptitude, capability. And I feel like we need to support foster carers recognise the different pathways that children in care take. Not every child in care wants to go to university, but not every child in care doesn't have the capacity to go to university either. So I think we
Yeah.
need to make sure that we are really child-centred on how we support each of the young people that we care for.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So what do you feel, so you're obviously you had a negative experience through fostering,
Mm.
etc. We talk a lot about, young people having positive role models. What do you think keep you sort of driven to I know you went with, you had education that kept, but what was your thread that kept you sort of motivated and driven, do you think?
I think it was just a sense of incredulity that that was my life. I just felt very different from the life that was being laid out for me. I was like this, it just didn't feel right. I was just,
Yeah.
and I feel it was a drive for survival, I think. This doesn't feel good, so how can it be different? What could you do that could make it different for you? If you don't
Yeah.
want this for you, what's within your power and control to change things? And I think it was that
Yeah.
drive. Some people call that resilience. I don't think it is resilience. I think it was running away or trying to survive the circumstances I was in by trying to change them to make more comfortable kind of situation.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
lucky I was born with a brain.
Yeah, well, say you've become very successful now, and
Mm.
now I know you've got a lovely family, and you're at the pinnacle of your career in terms of a doctorate and stuff. So that's amazing. A big inspiration for not just anyone, but for care experienced people to see that as well. I think what you said, there's that hope, and there is a way that you can make a success of your circumstances. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
No, it's fine.
So some of your like you said, you've had a variety of different roles you sort of listed off there. So what out of it, before we get to New Zealand, what were some of the highlights, would you say, of some of your roles that you've had? What did you enjoy, and what were the challenges in some of them?
Oh, I loved working in leaving care. I was a leaving care social worker. I loved it. Absolutely. I think once you have lived experience, as long as you don't let your lived experience overtake your work experience, it really does help you do the job and connect well. And leaving care, still leaving care and care leavers are kind of where my heart sits. That's
Yeah,
real. I feel like it's a real vulnerable time in a young person's life that's often overlooked. Just because they're chronologically older doesn't mean they're developmentally able to take on the responsibilities we expect of them at that age. So working as a leaving care social worker for Waltham Forest and for Haringey were both real kind of highlights of my career. Um, I worked at Haringey just after the whole Victoria Columbier case.
I want to.
So,
Yeah,
every child matter was coming out, pathway plans for care leavers were coming out. It was quite an exciting time to be working
yeah,
because things were changing for the better. We were learning lessons about what hadn't been good enough in the past, and things felt like we were
yes,
progressing forward in a way that was aligned with what I felt young people needed at that stage of their life. So that was a real kind of highlight of my career. Um, I worked at St James's Psychiatric Hospital for a while, which is
oh,
obviously
yeah,
yeah.
and yeah, still going up, doesn't it? Yeah,
um, that was one of my first roles for the NHS, and that was a real eye opener as well. Um,
yeah,
that was back in the 90s, and there was a lot kind of going on that's very different now in terms of
yeah,
practice.
definitely.
Um,
Yeah,
but that was, I think holding in mind that just because people were very unwell, it didn't mean that they weren't people and they had lives and families that cared about them. And we saw them in very acute states of being very unwell, but holding in mind them as a whole person and their illness just being part of who they were at that time.
cool.
And being able to have that perspective, I think, and learn that perspective in real time was really powerful in kind of humanizing the people that we work with. So that was a real learning lesson for me too. Um, but yeah, just lots of different things. I think all of it has really led to, I don't think, trauma informed or the phrase trauma informed has become more and more popular in recent years. But to me, it just means seeing the person behind the pain. It's who is this person, being curious about where they are and how they came to be,
Mm,
has always been a thread through my career. So I'd say I've always been trauma informed,
yeah,
even before we had that phrase to label it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, like you said, you've been in sort of children's services and different services for over 25 years, and I guess the childcare sector, or the care system, should I say, gets a bad reputation. There's people even these days, sort of, even some care experience say, like, it's not changed, since I was, in there in the 80s and 90s. But from your perspective, and your sort of lived experience, do you feel has it got better? Do you think over the years? What would you?
regulations got better, expectations got better. The higher standard that we hold ourselves to around caring for young people has definitely improved. Um, some of the, I think some of the mindsets and some of the challenges that we have, everybody gets activated by people's behaviour. People behave, it's a form of communication. And, children's behaviour pretty much is still quite similar. Children are still acting out their distress. What has shifted is our understanding of A, why children behave the way they do, and B, learning skills to better deal with it that move away from a behaviourist approach. But I do think there's still tricky parts and there's still difficulties, but I do think we're travelling in the right direction. And I have seen a big improvement in the way that people talk about, respond to, and care for young people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And even in the sort of the 20 years that I've been doing it, like you say, it used to be very that behaviourist approach and hopefully, and then I know we certainly are in Fairways, but you're seeing that people are moving a lot away from that more now. And
Yeah.
say understanding more around young people and the context around that and developmental processes and stuff. So
And
uh,
also, being trauma informed doesn't mean not having any boundaries. Children need boundaries, but it's about how
yes,
we hold those safely in a way that children feel safe and contained rather than ashamed or challenged.
yeah. So sorry, I'm not gonna, well, put you on the spot, but you said you're quite passionate about care leavers
Mm.
and that area of children, young adult social care. So we know, we always talk about the care cliff edge, where young people come to 18 and a lot of services and stop. What do you feel is need, or what do you feel is needed for young people? What if you had a magic wand and you could support, young people reaching 18, what do you feel is missing, or what can we do? Which is a big question to ask. I know we're passionate in Fairways about trying to support young people in care, but I guess the obvious one would be is that actually funding don't stop. It leads to 18, and actually we continue to treat them like young people, and them services continue. But we know that they all get stopped. So, but I didn't know if there's anything from your experiences you think, what, this would be a great service that could really support young people in care.
I think it's less of a service and more of a mindset, and it's about family connections. What do you do when you've got older children? Did you just kick them out on their 18th birthday and say, off you pop, good luck? You don't do that, do you? You keep showing
No,
up, and you understand that they're still your children, and they're still going to have needs. They might be different, but they've got a safe base to come back to should anything go wrong in their life. And that's largely missing for care leavers, is
yeah,
that,
yeah,
it's a very scary, lonely place to be when things go wrong, because there is no backstop. There's no place to put your head when the world gets weary and you have to keep going. And yes, you could argue that that makes you determined and resilient and tenacious, but it also takes a big chunk out of your nervous system, and it's the trauma you carry for the rest of your life.
yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, no. I get that. You're absolutely right. All young people, I think our oldest is 28 this year, and still, needs that support, and that family network. And
Yeah.
it's how do you create? There's that element of, like you say, relationships can stop at 18 or serve. And it's actually that's not reality, is it? And 1 minute you've got an adult there supporting you, and then they're told they're not allowed to, and it all comes down to finances, which is pretty sad.
It
Yeah,
is really sad, and it's less about, practical support, and it's about being held in mind and knowing that you belong somewhere. Um, I know very much that I belong in my best friend's family's life. I go and see them all the time. And when I came over that time when I was staying at their house, it was without question, you're here for a month, you come and
yeah,
stay with us. You're not paying for anywhere, it's home.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's the important thing, having that, I think. And it is about having the space where you are considered. And it's not always safe or appropriate for care leavers to be reunified with their families. Sometimes their families aren't safe enough to be with. So it is about finding, if there is no reunification, or there isn't a good enough attachment or space for them to be kind of supported within their family unit, how and where do we support them feel like they're held in mind and belong somewhere else?
Definitely. Thank you. Um, so you mentioned you went to the Tavistock,
Yeah.
which is an outstanding institute, very well known for Bowlby attachment on all the lovely stuff we enjoy reading about and learning about. So, what I guess first thing is, what made you go down the educational psychologist route?
I think my dedication to education and seeing that education for me had been the kind of the way out, and education wasn't easy for me. Like, school wasn't easy for me, but I knew that I was clever, I knew I was bright, and I knew I had potential. My primary school, I was very lucky at St Paul's. We had 2 teachers who won lifetime awards for outstanding teaching. In fact, my head teacher was on This Is Your Life. So, they were, yeah. And so, although there were still kind of dominant kind of mindsets around children and behaviour that were prevalent in that experience, I was always primed to believe in primary school, you've got potential, you can do this. So, and I guess I understood how important that had been for me, and I knew how difficult secondary school had been for me, and I knew that I wasn't the only one who'd experienced that. So I wanted to go into a space that helped the system understand children differently. And educational psychology, but my qualification is child community educational psychology, was the way that I felt like I could do that. How could I be developmentally focused, and how could I create one system and structure that all children are expected to engage with to be more child focused?
Wow, yeah,
Children spend half their life at school.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely, brilliant. So how did New Zealand come about then, and
Wow.
the service you set up there?
So when I lived in London, we had lots of friends who were Kiwis. We were quite often the token British friends round the pub table, my husband and I. And so I always was a little bit curious. And then I'd lived in Sydney for a little bit in 2004. I managed a children's home in Sydney. And I lived in Sydney for a bit, and I'd been over to New Zealand snowboarding. And so I knew what it was like. And then I'd had Albert, my first son, and then I fell pregnant with George quite rapidly after that. And we were watching the TV. I had George, he was about 10 days old. I was watching the TV, and Wanted Down Under came on the telly.
Oh, no,
And
yeah, I
at the end of it, it said, if you want to be part of our next programme, please apply. And I looked at my husband and went, oh, we should do that because we go on holiday. And so we did. And within, I think, 4 weeks, we were out in New Zealand with the BBC being filmed for an episode of Wanted Down Under. So,
brilliant.
and they
Wow.
put us up in Piha. We stayed in Piha, which is eventually where we moved to when we first lived there. So
So it worked. The program worked.
the program worked, and they came back and they did 2 more episodes. There's 3 really boring hours of me and my family. Because quite often I think they play on that program, they play to the mild peril of people disagreeing. But Andrew and I were like, oh, this is good. Do you like it? Yeah, it's just like 3 boring hours of a family agreeing with each other. Yeah, so we've had 3. We've had the Wanted Down Under, revisited and revisited.
Oh wow, Siri, got on box
I
there.
know. Don't binge watch it. It's not worthy.
So how long ago was that then when you moved there?
Moved there in 2014, July 2014. And we were there literally 10 and a half years.
Books.
Yeah.
And how did the because you've set up a very successful child psychology service for New Zealand.
Yeah.
It's the whole of New Zealand.
Yeah,
Isn't
across New Zealand, yeah.
it? Okay, so how did that come about? Talk to me a little bit about that.
So when I first moved over, I worked for the Ministry of Education. So New Zealand is set up differently. The government covers, here we've got local authorities with different, it's not the same in New Zealand. It kind of covers the whole area. And I worked for something called the Intensive Wraparound Service, which was taking the most vulnerable, in need young people and families and following the wraparound process and kind of putting support in place. So I was coordinating that. And then I was practice lead. And then I fell pregnant with my 3rd son, Henry. And I went on maternity leave, and I just got this feeling that I couldn't go back. And it was nothing to do with the Ministry of Education. It was nothing to do with the work. It was like, it just felt like once I'd had a break from it, it was no longer, I just got this feeling that I needed to do something else, and I wanted to spend more time around my kids, basically. So I set up the child psychology service, and our strapline is do what you love around the people you love in your life. And I figured if I'm a psychologist and I love my job and I want to practice, but I don't want to do that at the detriment of my own attachments to my own children, there's got to be other, primarily female mum psychologists who want to do that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's how I started. So I started myself, and then a colleague from the ministry joined me, and then another colleague from the ministry joined me. And then it just snowballed. So now we've got 42 psychologists and nearly
Wow.
2 psychiatrists across the whole of New Zealand.
That's amazing.
So
And that's still operating,
they're
isn't
still
it?
operating, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, you must be really proud of that. That's a pretty
I
good.
am really proud of that, because what we've done is created something that didn't exist before, that improves not just outcomes for the young people and children that we work with, but the people who do the work.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I get messages on the daily from my team in New Zealand. Just I got one last night saying thank you for being in my life. It's
Yeah, yeah,
such a nice feeling to know that. And I haven't done anything apart from do what I needed to be done for me. And maybe that's the legacy of, being care experienced, is that I knew
yeah,
very much what was missing for me, and I've created it for other people. And that comes through into my work too.
yeah,
I
yeah,
want to enable, my thing is, if I look after the psychologists look after the people we serve.
definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, yeah, I love that. Brilliant, brilliant. So really good. Over 10 years, say, and then you moved back to England.
Yeah, we did. So we got
Just
to the
over a year
point,
now, or
pardon?
is it just over a year you've been back? Or
We moved back on November the 30th,
okay,
2024.
sure,
And
okay.
we got to the point where we'd been there 10 years. My husband's family were um, getting older. He missed his mum particularly. And I think that draw back home always happens. We only went for 2 years and we stayed 10. And Albert, our oldest son, was getting to the point that if we were going to move, we needed to move now because of doing his mocks next week, actually, his mock GCSEs. And it was, what's the least disruptive point at which we can move? And if we didn't move then, we would have had to wait till Albert finished his exam period, like a couple more years, and by which time George would have kicked in. So it was just like a
Oh,
now
yeah,
or
yeah,
never moment, really. So we did. We bit the bullet. We've still got the business in New Zealand. Andrew now largely runs that, and I give him clinical support and provide supervision every now and then as and when needed. Um, but largely the processes and systems are quite robust, and they kind of run themselves. And the kids are settled back. It was a bit of a baptism by fire, literally moving back. George went out.
culture shock, I bet, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. It was like, my kids are Kiwis. I've got 4 boys. And 2 were born in Brighton, but moved to New Zealand when they were very little. And 2 were born in New Zealand. And so when they moved here, they were used to, we lived on an acre with a swimming pool. Their school was over 60 acres. There were ducks waddling across the playground. It was all, they didn't wear shoes or uniform. And so it was all very different to here. And George went for a bike ride on the first day we moved into our new house. And he came back, and so we're in Southsea. So he just was in central Southsea. He wasn't anywhere.
Wow.
And he came back and he went, "Mum," and I went, "Yeah." He went, "There's a bin on fire, and what does sectioned mean?" I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
welcome to Portsmouth, darling."
get used to that. Oh,
um, but it's been
that's fun.
it's been so good to watch them adapt to a different culture. It is a different culture, a different mindset, different way of being, and just watch the enrichment that's had on their lives and their sense of self and their confidence and their competence. They've had to
Yeah.
start new schools, and they've flourished. They've really, really flourished. So I'm really proud of them.
Oh, cool, cool. Lovely. So then I guess that leads me on to Fairways.
Yeah.
Um, how and what made you come across the Fairways then?
Well, I've been involved obviously with Fairways a little bit, and the first time I kind of came to Fairways and Laura showed me round, I felt at home. Like I just felt like I belonged. Like I think It's something to do with values, isn't it? It's, nobody's perfect, but everybody tries their hardest to be
Yeah.
aligned and get it right and grow and reflect and take accountability. And it was just so refreshing. And I think the other thing is that I've worked so long on my own doing everything for everybody. I can now turn to someone and go, hey, what's your thoughts on this? Hey, what's your expertise on this? I don't have to learn everything myself. There are people here, and I know they're already aligned with the way that I want to show up in the world. And it's wonderful to be part of an organization where our actions are greater than the sum of its parts. You
Yeah.
know, it's, and there's lots of opportunity, there's lots of goodwill, and that's all you need, really, isn't it? Goodwill and opportunity to do
Yeah.
great things.
Definitely. Yeah. No, it's I'm obviously absolutely delighted to have you on board. We never knew this was even going to, you know, happen, did we?
No.
We just met on LinkedIn. If and then I wanted you to do a speak, I guess, a conference, staff conference, and then, before you know it, you're now with us, which is fantastic. And obviously you've joined as a director of clinical services, and your remit is to come in and really improve and develop our clinical team, our services. So really excited to have you on board, and thank you for everything that you've done so far. Yeah, one of the questions I always ask people is, what's your why? What gets you out of bed in the morning? So what's your why, Emma?
I think I'm strongly driven by a belief in social justice, what is right and what makes the world a better place. And if I can get up and keep showing up in a way that I think improves outcomes, not just for me, not just for the people I work with, but humanity as a whole in a small way, then that's my why. It's, there's so much good in the world. And I feel like if we just can sew all the little bits together, that gets amplified. And I think that's my why, is that I just want to see people feel okay with who they are, happy in their skin, and the world to be a safe place where people feel like they can flourish. And I guess that is my why. I guess my why is I want to create a space in the world that I didn't have when I was a little girl. It really isn't rocket science.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, I love that. Yeah, no, I think that oozes out of you. You're such a lovely human, and I think your values align. But no, but you just want to do good, and you're always looking for the best in people and want to support people, and that's really nice. So that leads me on to your values. What would you say your core values are?
Or I think compassion.
Yeah,
Um, I think compassion, kindness. I think bringing a sense of lightness to things that are tricky. I am driven by trying to push things forward and progress. I think progress and um,
yeah,
achievement, but not achievement as in competitive achievement, but collective kind of achievement, progress, moving things forward is probably one of my values. But I'd say a deep sense of compassion and seeing the best in people.
yeah. Definitely, definitely. Wow. Okay. So, final question. um, what I ask all my guests is, with the current sort of chaos of everyday life and sort of people's well-being and the mental health crisis that we currently face, what do you do for your own well-being? What do you suggest?
So I run, I sea dip. So I love sea dipping.
Yeah.
Well, I say I love it. There are several expletives that exit my mouth as I walk into the sea in the winter months.
Yeah.
But I do love it. I love the sense of community that comes with that too. So I'm driven by positive communities, physical exercise, and to be honest with you, spending time with my kids. Like that's what I do. I went my son went skateboarding. I went roller skating yesterday. We went down to Southsea Seafront and he roller skate, I roller skated, he skateboarded, and just stuff like that. Just moving your body, connection, being present, and trying to
Yeah.
kind of unhook yourself from all of the stuff that's going to command your attention, and reminding yourself the only thing you truly have is this moment right here, and leaning into it. And that's what I do for my well-being, because the times that I forget that are the times that I become stressed, anxious, all of those things that most of
Yeah.
us feel on a regular. So
Yeah.
mindfully creating spaces for me to move my body and spend time with those I love.
Brilliant. So you say run, you do a bit more than run. You've been doing park runs. Didn't you do the 10K self?
I did the Great South Run. I ran the marathon.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm not just a bit of running. Okay. So running, sea dips, and spending time with your family and kids.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
that's it.
Love it.
Yeah, just
Cool.
connection.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Emma. It's been lovely speaking to you, and hopefully, people listening have learned a little bit more about you and your background. So, I'm really looking forward to the future, working together, and the improvements and the lovely things we're going to create for young people. So, thank you.
Me too. Thanks so much for having me. And also, I just love working at Fairways.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Yeah,
Bye bye.
bye.